Hi guys. Before I go onto this episode, I just wanted to give a massive shout out to the incredible team at Wear That Now, particularly my girl Christelle for dressing me today. If you're anything like me, going to the mall is probably one of the most stressful experiences, especially after having kids. You end up spending hours looking for parking, dragging them around the mall, probably bribing them with sugary sweets just to try on just that one outfit. But Wear That Now has come to save our lives. What they do is they team you up with one of their incredible stylists to curate a perfect box that fits every style, every budget, and every occasion. They will be able then to put that box together and send it straight to your doorstep. You try the clothes on in the comfort of your own home. The outfits that you love, you keep, and the ones that you don't, you simply send back. It's as easy as that. So the next time you have an occasion and you want to skip them all altogether, head to www.wear.that.now.com. Check out their services and be sure to DM me some of your perfect outfits for me to have a look at. Happy shopping. Hi, and welcome to another episode of They Say It Takes a Village. Joining me today is one of the most well-respected mindset and wellness coaches out there, Kai Simmonds. In her career as a motivational speaker, Kai has helped over 50 companies, including Standard Chartered, Alpha Tame Group, and Shellhoop, educate their employees on the importance of prioritizing mental health to avoid burnout, which has become inevitable in this day and age. Born and raised in Hawaii, Kai marries ancient tradition as well as new age techniques to help her clients make mindful steps every day for a greater impact. And she's sitting across the table from me to talk to me about a subject which I think we all need help with, which is stress management and how it directly links to emotional intelligence. So without further ado, Kai, welcome to They Say It Takes a Village. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk about all these things today.
I know. I feel like it's one of those things that while I was preparing your questions, there was 1,000 questions that was running through my mind. I'm like, I've only got an hour, so somehow I have to fit it all in. So thank you so much.
I love it. Love being here.
Do you want to give the listeners a little bit of background about yourself?
Yeah.
How long have you been in the UAE and what you practice?
Yeah. So I came out here 8 years ago. It's just me and my cat as a teacher. And the reason I got into this is because of my own struggles with mental health and well-being, having mental and physical issues, which I never really found any answers to. I was having panic attacks. I was having gut issues, acne issues, weight issues, low energy. They're just a long list of things. And when I was going to the doctors asking what's wrong with me, they just kept saying, oh, it's stress. Oh, it's anxiety, but not really telling me, okay, what's the medicine? Right. So I was like, what's the medicine? Is there a pill? That was how my mind thought before. It was a lot of my own struggles that led me down this path to really try to figure out how to heal myself. That was the main reason I got into this in the beginning.
Just you being the priority and you realized that something was a little bit off.
Yeah. It was all about myself. And I always tell people I was my first client.
Which is the best, really. Because I mean, if you want, you are your best judge of character. So if you can recognize something within you, then trying to help other people, you're kind of relating to them on a different level as well.
I think, and it helps a lot. That's how I relate a lot with my clients because the things that they're telling me, I actually remember and I know what it feels like when they're describing these things to me. So I feel like I connect to them on a deeper level because of those experiences that I've had.
Yeah. Before we started recording, you were saying that I think the turning point is when you got an anxiety attack.
Yeah. So I had my first one when I was in the middle of teaching. When you're 25, 30 kids, that's kind of not a good place to have a panic attack. And I was stubborn. And I like to always share people that I wasn't this person who was very aware. I was very stubborn. So I was like, oh, let me just brush it off. Let me, numb myself. Let me distract myself with like some brunching, maybe some traveling. But it went away for a little while, and then it came back even worse while I was driving, which is another dangerous place to have a panic attack and an anxiety attack. And that was kind of the huge wake up call to me of like, there is something wrong. This is not okay. And I don't want to continue living my life like this. So let me try and figure this out. So I think it was, again, later down the line, I realized I wanted to do something. But in the beginning, very stubborn, not willing to face the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Until when?
Look, I'll say it was probably a year since that first panic attack to later on having them while I was driving and then telling my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, like crying, calling him on the side of the road. And he didn't really understand these things. So he was like, what's going on? So it was, probably a year later that I was actually ready to do something. But in between, I did go to the doctors. I did try to see what's wrong. And they just kept saying, oh, you're stressed. It's this. So I was like, okay, I'll go away. Yeah. Thinking stress just goes away on its own.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's a word that's thrown around so often.
Yeah.
Oh, you're stressed. Okay. And then what? You know, how? Okay. You know, I feel like it's one of those things that stress becomes almost like a everyday part of life. So you've just got to deal with it. And stress can be quite dangerous and it can be quite helpful. So it's very important to kind of narrow down what that is. Yeah. So I think that would probably be my first question.
Yeah.
How would you define stress?
Yeah. So I go with stress is literally a physiological response to your body thinking that it is in danger or you are not safe. Mm-hmm. And I want to take it back to a little bit and talk about like evolution and how stress came about. It's back in, when we were early humans, we didn't have technology, shelter to protect. Exactly. Yeah. Those hunter-gatherer days. Yeah. There's a part of our brain called the amygdala, which is kind of like our stress response trigger that was created to kind of let us know what's dangerous and what's not. So for example, like someone was walking, a snake bit them, and then your mind then sees, oh, snakes are dangerous. That's your amygdala telling you stay away from snakes, right? So I really kind of just want to reframe that, like our stress triggers, they think they're helping us. They think they're keeping us out of danger. Mm-hmm. They think that they're protecting us. Survival. That's why they were created, for us to survive. But, we've evolved, thousands of years, and our phones have evolved, our cars have evolved, but this part of our brain hasn't really caught up to date. So now it's being triggered by different things, which aren't actually like dangerous to us, but it is the same feeling as if we are under a threat or we are not safe. And it's a physiological response. So it's happening to our body. So that's kind of the idea of stress. And what I say is like, so you'll think, like, for example, traffic will cause you stress, right? And then your body's like all this honking, all of these things. And then it kind of sends like this signal to your nervous system. Oh, something is bad. There's something bad that's going to happen to you. And then I call it stress juice. It's not actually a real science term, but it sends like stress juice throughout your body, causing you to get into either fight, flight, or fawn, thinking you need to run from this danger, or you need to fight it, or you need to freeze. So then your body then, again, that's where the mental health issues connect to the physical health issues of like, now your body thinks it's under danger and it needs to get ready to fight, flight, or freeze. So that's kind of like what happens to your body on a physiological level when we're overstressed. Yeah.
So it's no longer just a slight irritation. It is a physical manifestation of something that's really pushed you.
Yep. And the thing that I always like to talk about is our nervous system. So the amygdala then triggers, we have two parts of our nervous system. We have our sympathetic nervous system. I like to say SNS, like SOS, right? Yeah. So this part of our body pumps cortisol, getting us ready to fight or flight. And then it pumps adrenaline, getting us to that. And it takes away all of the energy from our organs, from our digestive system, maybe even from our heart to get that part of our body going. So then we have the other part of our nervous system, which is the parasympathetic nervous system. Call it the rest and digest. Okay. So here we are going through life, maybe getting triggered by something, either traffic or something else. Our amygdala triggers our SNS or SOS system, fight or flight. But then we can then mindfully kind of shift it to activate our parasympathetic nervous system and kind of react or calm or manage that stress better. So for me, it's not like, oh, no, I can't do anything that's stressful. It's like, okay, give me the stress because I can regulate it now. I can handle it now. I can manage it better because I'm able to connect to my parasympathetic nervous system, which is that rest and digest part of us. So like what I say is we're built to handle stress. And we're also built to kind of regulate. Like we have these mechanisms in our body. And I'm like, what? How come no one told me this, that I don't need all these juices and all these, things.
Wellness stuff. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. But the thing is, I think to understand the tools to help you get from sympathetic to parasympathetic. I think that's where it is key. You know, if you don't have the tools to be able to switch those two off or on, it's quite difficult because, you know, the fight, flight, or you said freeze, it's quite a debilitating one to be in it. And it can, I mean, I feel sometimes certain triggers might, you know, get me into that point where I've got like a weird feeling in my stomach, you know, my mouth gets dry. I'm physically reacting to something. It takes me a while to kind of come out of it. And I think it's a matter of time, you know, where you think, okay, no, I'm not in danger. Everything is going to be fine. For me, it's a lot of it trying to solve a particular problem. Once I've solved that problem, I tend to calm down and I can physically feel, but I'm exhausted after that. Yeah,
it is. So there's two parts to that. There's the physiological side and then there's the mindset part of like why we're so stressed. And then the physiological, I like to say, so we need to complete a stress cycle. So when stress comes and floods us with this stress juice, we need to know how to release that. So like, let's say at work, you know, you have like a fight with a colleague or a boss. That's something stressful. But then you go home, your colleague, your boss isn't there, but you still take home that stress juice and it kind of builds up and maybe your child says something and maybe your husband does something. And then so the stress juice gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you kind of explode. Yeah.
I kind of feel like a pressure cooker, you know, and then all of a sudden it starts to twirl and then the smoke comes out and it's like, you know, that sometimes I do get like that. And it is on an overwhelming day. And it's, you know, you're told, you know, just breathe through it, take 5 minutes. But a lot of people aren't well equipped to handle it.
Definitely. And the thing that I'm a former teacher. So I always come with this mindset of like, I'm here to teach when I'm working with my clients. So I do, and then we do it, and then you do. You can't just be like, oh, here, go and learn this new thing, right?
These are the steps and here you go.
Right. Like when we went to school, someone taught us, we practiced with that teacher or that person, and then we went on our own. So even when I went through this, I didn't do this by myself. I had coaches, I had mentors, I had therapists who taught me. And so I always say you don't have to do this by yourself, especially in the beginning of learning, first off, what is going on, and then how to do it, and have someone hold your hand through that beginning phase. But then after that, you can take yourself through it. It's definitely possible.
I've got a question that's a bit off topic, like, you know, sort of a tangent. But why do you think this generation is particularly stressed out?
So many reasons. I will say that
there is a lot.
Yeah.
But don't you find, I feel like we are a highly stressed group of people. I don't know why.
There's two edges to that. I would say technology and social media. I love them for some things, but then on the other side of it, it can be very unhelpful. For example, like technology is constantly evolving and it's faster, it's better. But we're trying to keep up with technology. We are not machines. We cannot go faster and longer like a battery life.
It's only version 2. I don't know what at this point.
And then we have social media, which is amazing because we have access to so many different types of knowledges and we can connect with people all over the world, which I love. Then there's the other side where there's that whole comparison trap where you go down that thing and you think like, where before we just knew about what's happening in our community and our nervous systems aren't really built to know what's happening beyond kind of our world or our village or our community. We were designed in a way where, again, hunter-gatherer days, we were just supposed to know what's going on with our neighbor around there. But now that we have access, like it's kind of like information overload, right? We're consuming all this information and then again, in good ways, but in also maybe not so good ways. So because we're constantly on either technology, social media, it's like, when do we get to recharge? When do we get our break? So I think it's a combination of that. Those two things, those are my things. I'm sure there are other things, but those are the two things that come up the most for me.
You know, honestly, I 100% agree with you because a lot of the times, even, you know, so many times people sat across the table for me and social media has always been somewhat hanging around as something good and something not so good. It is a common theme in everybody's life. And it's, I think it's being mindful to understand that is it comes with its good and it comes with its bad. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right because you could be stressed out at work, but you're at work and you come back home and potentially with no social media, you can find ways to get, you know, feeling a bit better. But then if you come back and you've got social media and this is making you feel inadequate and that's making you feel a bit irritated, the cycle just doesn't end.
The stress juice just builds up and builds up and they get pressure cooker or burnout. Yeah.
What are the common signs that you would, you know, sort of mark as red flags if somebody is, sort of undergoing a great deal of stress?
Yeah. So definitely you're going to notice your health deteriorate. You're going to probably have, the first thing is gut issues, stomach digestion issues. That's the first thing you're probably going to notice because of the brain your stomach is connected to your nervous system.
It's so funny because you probably will then go to see a doctor and then he'll prescribe you a pill for something without getting down to the root.
That is exactly what happened to me. So I was having all of these digestive issues. So I kept getting all of these things to help with my stomach, but the root cause wasn't necessarily my stomach. It was the anxiety and the stress that was going on. So that's a huge thing. Gut issues, check that box. The second thing is this constant feeling of you're tired all the time. Mm-hmm. Either you can't sleep or you sleep for 10 hours and you wake up and you're still tired. So low energy. And then another thing is acne is another thing. And this was a huge thing is I was the most irritable person. Being my temper was that, one wrong thing and you would just, cause I was so reactive. I was again, that fight or flight. And I was the fight. When I get stressed, I'm the fight. So I was react, defense. So I think those would be, there's quite a few more. I think another one I hear a lot is brain fog. So you kind of you just forget things. Your memory kind of goes, you're just not productive. So at work, you'll see that. And again, having all these things going on in your life, you're probably not in the best mood. Your family's probably noticing that. Your friends are probably noticing that. But those are the main things that something is off. And panic attacks. Forgot about that. Anxiety attacks. That was another thing that, those are definitely the signs that something is not right.
It's so funny. I've, spoken to sort of functional medicine specialists, and stress is a massive contributor to autoimmune diseases.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's just one of those things that you would never really, again, link it to actual physiological disease, and it's just, it's unbelievable. And it's that realization that stress can potentially lead to a cascade of problems, and if it's not dealt with correctly, then it's just going to keep going around and around and around.
Yeah.
And that's obviously my next question. What happens if it's not properly looked into?
Yeah. You hit burnout, you hit a peak, burnout, I say when you explode. And I just to use the example of myself or other people, this is the thing that I always see is you hit burnout, right? And then you take 2 weeks to, recover, rest, which you should. But then I see a lot of people going back and repeating the same things and hitting burnout again and again and again. And every time you hit burnout, the second, third, fourth, fifth time, that recovery time gets longer. So it goes from 2 months to maybe a month to maybe 2 months to 6 months. And so a lot of times I hear people say, I can't do this because I'm too busy. I'm your body will take that time from you if you do not do this right now. Mm-hmm. And I'm a big believer of doing little things during the day that build up and create compound versus instead of running off and taking a 1 month week.
A massive
or quitting your job and traveling the world. If you can do that, please do that. That sounds amazing. But for me, that's not really the approach that I got when I was going through my kind of burnout and my anxiety attacks. I had to figure out how can I do my daily life or handle my responsibilities and take care of myself. And that's the approach that I really kind of want to use. I use with my clients. It's you incorporate it into your life. It's not I leave and I go for 2 weeks to Thailand or Bali. Yeah, please do that if you want. No, if you want. I'm not saying don't do that, but
it'd be really lovely. I think I need one of those.
Yeah, we all do. We all deserve that.
Yeah. No, it's, again, this podcast, obviously, it's a lot of the listeners are mothers, with children. And of course, children have a beautiful way of taking over a lot of aspects of life. And, every well-meaning parent wants to give the best.
Yeah.
And, we always hear you can't pour from an empty cup. You can't pour from an empty cup. You have to, have a little bit of time to be fulfilled as a person and reduce that stress. But then counter argument is, where's the time? Mm-hmm. Because there is this preconceived, and I think it's because of now this massive craze of wellness and stuff. There's this preconceived idea that you must go on to these big wellness retreats and you have to do this in order for you to come back and live a stress-free life. Number one, stress-free life.
What world is that in?
Sign me up.
What world is that in?
Take me to that planet.
Yeah.
So I think understanding that stress is going to be a part of your life. But stress management doesn't have to be so drastic. And I can do small changes. I can't do month-long retreats kind of thing, And that's important because I mean, I think as a mom with little children, washing her hair is a feat in itself, you know? So to be able to kind of apply, you know, changes that are not going to take away from the attention that you've got the kids or at work or with the family or whatever it might be. Those are the ones that are going to create a lasting impact, as opposed to the big drastic ones, which I've sort of seen around.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the other thing I always like to say to moms, especially because I do have some clients who are moms, is you're setting the example for your future children, right? You're their role model. So if you're over there practicing self-care and meditation and you're preaching all these things, your child is going to grow up with it's okay to take care of myself.
Absolutely.
When they grow up. Yeah. Instead of I can't do this. I must, do this.
It all. Yes. Be super stressed out.
Exactly. So I always remind them, like, you're setting the example that, hey, it's okay. It's okay to do these things for yourself because they're going to see that as well. Yeah.
So of course, a lot of the listeners have thought, yes, this is great. I can potentially be stressed. I need the strategies.
Yes.
So what are some of the strategies that people can sort of implement? Of course, not giving too much away, but just high level strategies that can be implemented on a daily basis.
Yeah.
That have been proven to counteract stress.
Yeah. So going back to kind of what I was explaining about what stress is the nervous system. We have too much stress that's activating the sympathetic nervous system, or SOS. What we want to do is activate the PNS, or the parasympathetic nervous system. Yeah. And the way that we do that is through something called the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve goes all the way down from your brain, all the way down your spine and into your stomach. Now, the amazing thing is, in order to activate your vagus nerve, there are like hundreds of ways to do it. So I always tell my clients is you're going to create a toolbox. So you do what works and feels best for you. So I know you're going to hear there's the pretty standard ones, deep belly breathing. And that's the reason it's doing that is because when you breathe in and you fill your chest all the way down to your stomach and you exhale, whenever you exhale, you're activating your parasympathetic nervous system.
Oh, that's really
so
cool.
If you're like, oh my God, I'm stressed, they say breathe. And I'm like, why? But by that exhale, that is activating the vagus nerve. So that already is going to, so even for me, like I said, I still have stress in my day. I'm not like a stress free, but I take 10 minutes in my car and I just sit there and I exhale. Every exhale,
just take a deep breath.
And exhale.
Okay.
And make sure you fill your belly. Fill your belly. And that exhale is that rest and digest, that vagus nerve, that self-healing part of you. So that's one, super easy.
That is super
easy.
The
other one is singing or humming. And again, when you're humming, you like that or the singing. And again, it does not need to be good. I am not at all a good singer.
We're not Beyonce here.
Yeah. Exactly. No, that is also activating your vagus nerve. So for me, I have like a happy playlist and I'm just in my car singing, screaming at the top of my lung. But then I feel better because again, activating the parasympathetic nervous system. The other thing that I like to use, this is when I think I'm like at peak stress, is literally shaking your body. So shaking,
shake it off.
Literally shake it off.
Yeah.
Shaking your body is again activating that parasympathetic nervous system. I also imagine myself having all this stress juice from like the day and I want to come home and I want to relax and I'm just shaking it off. Again, activating your parasympathetic nervous system, but then a bit of that mindset work with like releasing that stress. So like those are a few that I always say, those are ways that you can do it. But I always kind of, when I'm working with my clients, I'm like, we go through different practices and exercises. And then I ask them, which one did you like? Which one you didn't like? Leave what you didn't like and keep what you want, because it's all about creating your own customized, personalized toolkit that works for you.
I love that. It's not a one size fits all.
No, it is not. And one of my personal favorites is like, I will in the middle of the day find a like fancy cafe, phone off, order a cup of tea, or in the morning when I'm home, my first cup of coffee, my husband knows, do not speak to me until I've had that first cup of coffee. I don't exist.
I'm quite the same. My coffee is now in the bathroom with the door closed just for 10 minutes, just so that nobody bothers me.
Yeah.
It sets me up for the rest of the day.
Yeah, exactly. These little moments where you're just disconnected. My phone is away. I'm just drinking that tea and I'm nobody. No, I'm nobody.
Yeah.
No, don't talk to me.
Yeah.
That's another thing. Again, very personal to me, but those are just the few that I like to recommend, but there's so many more. And you go on this journey and you find the ones that work for you. You leave what doesn't, because that's what I've found a lot with my clients and myself is like, you go on Instagram, you see all these wellness influencers doing these things, then you try the thing and then you're like, I hate it. How am I going to do this every day? But there's like 100 things. Yeah. So it's kind of like, I say like when you buy your clothes, like you're just talking about, like you go and you try them on and like, oh, this feels good. You buy it. It doesn't feel good. You put it back.
That's it.
So that taking that approach towards what feels good for you and what is activating your vagus nerve and what is your self-care practice, that is how you will do it every day.
The breathing, I find so fascinating because there's a lot of places where they, do breath work and all of that. To be honest, and I'm going to say, and I'm pretty sure everybody's going to hate me, I was always like, why would I go to a class to breathe? I'd rather go to a yoga class or a Pilates class or something a little bit, Yeah. But I'm going to try it because I really do think that I have noticed I do it that subconsciously. Like if, got somebody having a tantrum and this person screaming out from the other end of the room, if I just unintentionally, I'm not thinking about it, I do kind of compose myself a little bit more to not be as reactive. Yeah. Yeah.
And our bodies they're amazing. Like even when like at least for me, I'm frustrated, you'll find yourself sighing. You're like, oh, yeah. Those are your bodies forcing you to exhale, right? To activate your parasympathetic nervous system.
That is so funny.
Like
I do that all the time.
Yeah, your body is trying to tell you, exhale, calm down. So, and I also want to say, like, I'm a huge skeptic on everything. Up until 2 weeks ago, I was like, ice baths, what is that? That is so like, whatever.
No, but honestly, they're really good.
I know, I tried that 2 weeks ago and I'm eating my words.
They're really good.
I'm really eating my words.
I was like, well, me too. I was like, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. Because I hate the cold. So I was like, why would I do that?
Like I would never take a cold shower.
Never.
But I did it. And I was like, oh, I really feel good after
No, I love them.
Yeah,
I love them.
And they're quite addictive, aren't they?
They are. Yeah. But they do breath work.
That's it. You do breath work and you're constantly taking in and then, breath work is actually, I only sort of got into it when I was pregnant with my second, and a lot of breath work is focused on maintaining sort of labor and active birth and all of that. It's so much emphasis placed on managing labor. So that's where I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. And then from then on, I was a little bit more into it. But before then, I was like, what? No, like just breathe. We do it naturally and unconsciously that you naturally assume that it's just but no, it's so interesting.
There's an amazing book if you want to get yourself convinced called Breath by James Nestor. It's a yellow book. That was a book whenever someone says, I don't believe it. I was like, just read that book and then let me know.
Yeah.
So that book, if anyone's listening,
I'll link it.
That's a great book to start.
Very cool. Okay. So now obviously today we're talking a little bit about stress management and then of course, emotional intelligence. Now, when I was going through, I didn't know how to marry the two. And so obviously now I'm going to ask you what exactly, or how would you define emotional intelligence and why should we all strive to have it? I feel it's always everybody wants to be emotionally intelligent.
Yeah. So they are totally linked. So we'll get into that later, but I'll first address your question. So emotional intelligence is basically the awareness of your emotions, knowing how to first identify them, communicate them, and express them to others. And then the last part of that is how to regulate your emotions and kind of not let your emotions take over. But it's not about controlling your emotions. We don't control our emotions.
Let's stifle it
let's
down.
Get that off that table, okay? We learn how to regulate or manage them. So yeah, that's kind of what emotional intelligence is in like a really brief description.
I find it's very important because I'm pretty sure every single parent out there wants to harness a few things. One, resilience in their children, and another to make sure that they have emotional intelligence because that essentially is going to be the way they treat others and how others may, the interaction between different people. But like you said, it's trying to find a balance where they're not stifling their emotions, sort of what is it? You name it to tame it kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very big thing. I feel like I'm really trying to get into it with the boys.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting.
It is. It's a whole, I always say, learn how to surf your emotional wave. We're not, you see a big wave coming. I'm from Hawaii. So like surfing is a huge analogy I use. And I think I can use it enough. People know what surfing is. You have a wave, you have a surfboard. You got to catch the wave and not get crushed by the wave. Yeah. So I always say we need to learn how to, the wave is your emotions, or your big emotions or heavy. I don't want to say bad emotions. There's no bad emotions. We have heavy, we have light. That's how you have your big emotions, your heavy emotions. And when the wave comes, you can't run away from, you can never outrun the wave, but you can learn how to surf the wave. So that's what I say with our emotions. We're learning how to surf our emotional waves, because they're going to come and they're going to go. You can't control the ocean and her waves. Our emotions, we can't control them. They're a part of life. They're a part of, our daily happening. So yeah, that's how I like to kind of say what we do with them.
Okay. So now emotional intelligence, stress management.
Yes.
What's the connection?
So the connection, and for me, the work that I do very much connects to the, foundations of somatic. So this is something called either somatic. Some people in the wellness industry call it embodiment, and I've heard other people call it biohacking. So there might be some other names for these things, but when you come down to the concept, they're all the same. And basically it's the belief that our emotions carry energy. And I like to say, and our emotions are energy in motion. And when we have an emotion, we have a specific energy. And we feel it in our body. Like, for example, when I literally had anxiety attacks, it was my chest. My chest felt super tight, right? And so when we are aware of our emotions, emotional intelligence, and we're aware of our nervous system, we're combining that. That's kind of the somatic work. And we're learning to listen to our bodies. And like I was saying earlier, stress is a physiological response. So when we're able to identify where in our body the stress is through either emotional intelligence or somatics, we can then release the stress, or we can complete the cycle, or we can ride the wave, whatever it is. So again, they're stored in our bodies. And if over time, I think you mentioned earlier that some functional
medicine professionals
said that it leads to autoimmune diseases, because then again, the idea that emotions are energy, those heavy emotions are then stuck in our body for long periods of time, can result in, autoimmune diseases, which we were perfectly healthy with. So that is for me kind of how they all sing together. So it's all about listening to our bodies and releasing the stress juice through regulating our nervous system.
That's so interesting, because again, I would have never made the connection. I would have naturally thought that emotional intelligence is one thing and has nothing to do with stress. It's funny. That, yeah.
It is. And again, because I was just like that person when I was going through this journey. I was like, no rock left unturned. I had to look in every single corner. And the more I looked in things, the more I kept seeing repeating themes or repeating patterns or repeating ideas, like in Ayurveda, in traditional Chinese medicine, in yoga, in the chakras, in somatics. And I was like, it's all connected and it's all here.
It's all connected. And you are, as a human being, is so complex. And, and I think it is, like you said, you go back to that ancient self. And then obviously with modern science and all of that, you kind of tie it in to almost be that incredible version. Yeah. Well, I guess as much as you can be, so it is very interesting. And
more days, modern science and modern medicine is proving all of these things. So I know I might be going in these other directions, but the more research is being done, it's just proving it. It's real.
But do you not think that a lot of the things now, I feel a lot of people, there is a movement towards more traditional sort of medicine or approaches, and kind of really second guessing the Western approach.
Yeah.
To whether it's medicine or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
I find everyone is now at a point where they're looking a little bit more inward.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing, to be honest. There was an era where everybody, you go to a doctor for everything.
Yes.
And that was kind of, I don't know, a bit of a cycle of whether it's bad habits, problems after problem. And it's again, this like cascade of illnesses that we never found a problem. We never found a solution for.
Yeah.
So
I definitely, and again, coming, from the US, I was brought up with that idea of like, oh, you're sick, take a pill. There's a pill. Even like what I was saying earlier, I was stressed. Where's the pill?
Yeah.
Give me the chill pill. There's no chill pill. Sorry.
That's it.
That's why I was brought up to believe that specifically, but then it didn't work. So I went the other way and it worked.
I have to ask, are there how much does self-care or your ability to practice self-care have an impact on, number one, stress management, and therefore emotional intelligence?
Absolutely. And so the word self-care, I like to create my own little definition. So
again, a word that's been thrown around a lot.
Yeah. So the way that I define self-care, I say that our well-being, we're a well. You need to dig your well and you need to fill your well.
Okay.
So your self-care should incorporate two different things. One where you're digging your well. So something like waking up early, going for a run, maybe studying for some like course or these are like things that take effort and you're digging a well. But then there's this other part of self-care, which is filling your well, which is like going for a blow dry because you just feel like it, or it's like having a cup of tea or dancing because you feel good. So for me, it's very important to define self-care as things that, again, there's the whole self-improvement, self-development side, but then just doing things because they feel good and because they're fun.
Yeah.
And whenever you're doing either of these things, well, actually the second part, I can't think of one of those things that does not in some way activate your vagus nerve, because dancing activates your vagus nerve, singing, being happy, being in nature, all of those a lot of those self-care practices are actually activating your parasympathetic nervous system. So then again, regulating your nervous system, moving through the stress.
It's unbelievable.
So it's also very much connected. And just, I think also there's that element of sometimes, I think for me, I was like so serious about self-care. I was like, wake up at 5 a.m., go for a run. That it actually became more stressful.
It becomes, militant.
Yeah.
And that's the fear, because you're like, self-care. Okay. I have to do this. And they've said, whatever, a 7K run. Well, what if I was not feeling
10,000 steps a day,
10,000 steps. And, my kids have woken up 4 times in the night. I'm exhausted. I really just want a coffee. I would love a blow dry. It's not there's no formula to it. Self-care, I find, again, word that's always around.
Yeah.
And I find self-care is whatever you have an activity that there is guilt-free pleasure.
Yes.
A pleasurable activity that you've got no guilt.
Absolutely.
So honestly, for me, it's this podcast.
Yeah.
I've got no guilt.
Yes.
I really enjoy it. I love it. I get to sit across the table from the most incredible people and just sponge off their expertise. Yeah. And I don't feel guilty.
Yeah.
Whereas if, for example, halfway through the day, I really felt like a massage, but I know the kids are at home and they want me around. Throughout that 60 minutes, I'll be like, quickly wanting it to be over because I want to get home. So I'm full of guilt.
Yeah.
That wasn't relaxing, nor was it pleasurable in any way. So I don't know. I feel, self-care is you do what you need to do that makes you happy and not feel guilty.
Yeah.
I guess specifically for parents.
Yes.
Because the guilt is born when they are born. You feel guilty at every stage. But if you can carve out little pockets of time where you don't feel guilty, it's a win.
Yeah. And I want to talk about that guilt, because that's a huge thing that I hear a lot with mothers. And when I was going, and again, burnout is kind of the things that I look into. I read this book, which I think is amazing, called Burnout, and it's Unlocking the Stress Cycle. She talks about something called human giver syndrome, which as women, we are innately born with human giver syndrome, whether you're a mom or
I want to be the human taker.
Yeah. So she's like, there's human givers and there's human beings, and the human giver thinks all they have to do is give to the being. And so I always remind myself, are you a human being or a human giver? That's kind of my little self-pep talk of when I feel the guilt coming up of ooh, I should be doing this and I don't have kids, but I just thinking housework things or marriage things.
Yeah. I should have put in more effort on this and I should have done more on that.
Yeah.
And, for me, it's especially at the initial stage of doing the podcast, I used to do a lot of prep work, and until I found a proper rhythm that I cannot feel guilty about and still enjoy it. So at the time I'm doing the prep work, I keep thinking to the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, I should have been with them. Or if I've missed, a pickup and my husband's done it, I should have been the one to pick. Oh, yeah. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just never ending. So it's just the funniest stuff. I'm trying to focus at being a human being.
Yes. We are human beings.
Yes, as opposed to a human giver.
We are not those.
Although it's a lot of hard work and a lot of practice, but we'll get there.
We will.
So of course, as a mindset and well-being coach, do you have advice, whether that's, I think you said, so meditation and deep breathing, is that all for example, you meet with a client, in your toolbox, are there staples, or are they all you work out to what works for them?
What works for them.
Okay.
What works for them. Okay. That's the best thing. It is a combination. We start with, the usual things, and then we modify it in a way that they enjoy. Yeah. One of the things that my clients, she's like, I like to turn off all the lights and I like to dance in the dark. Oh. And that's that's her thing. And I tried it and I was like, wow. Cause when you turn off the lights, you're removing the sensors.
Yeah.
So it's like sensory deprivation, which is also helpful for our nervous system. Mm. So that's like combining two different practices, but that came up from her. So I give them the tools and then they go in and then they try it on and like they tweak it and they make it their own. And then I'm like, that's a great idea.
That is actually a really good idea.
Yeah.
I might try that tonight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or taking a bath in the dark. That's another thing. Another client told me, I was like, sensory deprivation is also another one.
Yeah.
I heard another.
What does that mean?
So when you remove your sensory, so like you remove your sound. Another client told me she just likes to go to the beach and like put her head under the water where her ears are under the water.
Oh yeah.
And she can't hear anything.
Yeah.
Again, that's activating the nervous system.
Yeah.
The vagus nerve. So again, once I explain what you need to do, they then go on these journeys themselves and then they come back with these amazing things that I'm like, that's awesome. Let me try that. So yeah, we start with those things, but then they modify it, they make it their own. And that's how you are able to do it every day.
So in the context of stress management, I think we are social creatures. So obviously, you have a husband, so do I. I've got kids, you've got working relationships and, family and things like that. How important is it for stress management and or emotional well-being and intelligence to set proper boundaries? And how does one go do that?
So to come back to that, the other day I did a workshop on confidence. And one of the things that I define now to be confident, because I feel like I'm confident now, is I'm able to set boundaries without feeling guilty.
Which is so difficult.
So that's the thing, telling myself that, again, this comes back into the mindset work. And so it's going into that, our subconscious of like, the way we were kind of brought up, either like on purpose or not on purpose. So for example, like for me, my mom, she worked, she had us, she never had any help. She never told me that I couldn't have help or I couldn't ask for help. She never told me this, but because I saw that and I was raised in that way, that subconscious belief got like taken into me that, oh, I can't ask for help if I need anything. So I really like to say for this types of thing, you need to get into your mindset. So you need to do mindset work and getting into your subconscious. It is not something you do from reading a book. I don't even do it myself. Like I have a coach who helps me unlock my subconscious beliefs. But when you go into those kind of subconscious beliefs or those limiting beliefs, for example, for me, mine was, I can't ask for help. I must be Superwoman. That was because I saw my mom. She was Superwoman. And I'm just going to really not I'm going to try really hard because it's true. I mean, I think it's a lot of moms do. They do pick up a lot of what's going on in the household and because they don't want to delegate. Yeah. But again, now I've gone to that limiting belief of like, no, I can ask for help. And now I think I was sharing with you, I do so many things now. I don't burn out. Like my stress load is like mountains, but I don't feel any stress or anxiety, like, or health issues because I ask for help or I take a break or I set boundaries, but I never would have been able to do that if I didn't come back to that limiting belief and kind of work through it. Mm. So I always go back and this is the thing that I use for our limiting beliefs is we all have, like I say, like an inner critic or an inner saboteur. That's the one telling you like, oh, you can't do this because you should be doing this. The first thing I always say is to name it. And when you name it, it comes in. Mine is called the Punisher. It's so dramatic. It's so dramatic. But even when I tell my clients, like they have like like one person was like Becky. Like,
yeah, like, that person.
Exactly.
Yeah, comes in.
So then when the negative inner critic comes up and it starts talking that nonsense, you're like, not today, Becky. And it creates some kind of space between like your thoughts and your actions versus before I would just let it come in and it would consume me.
I love that. I need to come up with a name for mine.
Yeah. Think of it and then just talk back to her or him or whatever it is and just be like, not today, not mean. We're not mean to them. They're still a part of us. So we can't be mean.
I haven't got the time today.
Just be like, no. Or you just let them go. I have another one. She's like Petty Patty and she just like is like super judgy.
Petty Patty. I think I'm going to use that one.
You can take it. You can take it. She's super judgy and I just let her go. And then I'm like, you done yet? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. And then I just move on with my day. And I don't take it in versus before I'd be like, Petty Patty would be like, oh, she has this outfit. So and then I would have to buy this outfit. And then I'm like, oh my gosh.
Just stop.
No.
Yeah.
I'm not hearing it.
I'm not going to entertain it at all.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Name it. Name the negatives.
Yeah. name the negative inner critic.
The inner critic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they do kind of sneak in when you least expect it. And you think, what? How did that thought creep into my mind?
It wasn't you. It was Petty Patty.
That's it. That girl, she needs to just sit down.
Yeah, not today.
Yeah, not today. Obviously, so again, I think we talked a little bit about that 5K run at 5 a.m. and, getting all super fit and healthy. Look, I understand, physical exercise is very important. We all know that, again, whether it's growth hormone that gets released, whether it's the endorphins, everything is a stress reducer.
Yep.
But I just wanted to know, in relation to it all, how important is it? Should we all be like the fittest version of ourselves?
That's for you to decide. But I know that, because this is a question I see a lot with clients, is like, they're like, oh, they eat really healthy.
Yeah.
They, every day after work,
clean,
they work out, they do their berries or, and they have these super special results. And I'm like, that's because when you're, stressed at work, you're activating that sympathetic nervous system, the SOS. Cortisone levels are high. Then you go to a HIIT workout. Your cortisone levels are high again.
Yeah.
You never got time to activate that parasympathetic nervous system, that rest and digest. So movement is crucial, but the right type of movement.
That probably there is a mic drop, because that's very important.
Yeah.
Because naturally people think the harder you go at the exercise, the better you'll feel.
No.
Honestly, I'm one of them. I do a lot of running and very high intensity running. And I'm probably going to have to rethink that.
I would, and this is so, I'm coming to that. A lot of people say, oh, do yoga. But guess what? There's like 500 types of yoga. There's hot yoga. There's power yoga. Those Ashtanga yoga, which is like super intense yoga. So then people are like, oh, I'm stressed. And then they go into a stressful yoga. If you are stressed, you need to go to a yin yoga class. Mm-hmm. A yin yoga class is literally, that's my favorite type of yoga to teach. It's literally, you're sitting down or lying down for an hour and you're activating your parasympathetic nervous system. You're still moving. So again, slow, gentle movements. If you're having a stressful job, right, you're activating your parasympathetic nervous system all day. You need to activate that other one. Rest and digest, yin yoga, a walk on the beach, like, it does not have to be 10K, dancing, shaking.
Running up a storm.
Yeah. So yeah, it's again, we want to activate that one. Yeah. Slow, gentle movements is how we do that. Yeah.
Good to know. Because I was always under the impression of, you're stressed out, go for a very, very long run. And I come back and I'm probably so depleted and exhausted that I feel like, okay, maybe I'm less stressed, but I could potentially be putting more stress on.
Yeah. Maybe you're distracted now because you're not thinking about it because you're so exhausted.
I've pushed it down because the physical exhaustion has come into play. That's so interesting. Find an activity that potentially reduces the stress level.
Exactly. And balances it out. We want balance. Balance in everything. Everything is key.
Absolutely. You said it right there. Self-compassion. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, that was probably like the hardest lesson for me to learn, because I had to start being nicer to myself because I wasn't for a long time. So yeah, it's a vital role because, and again, that one comes from that mindset work of like never being told like, oh, love your neighbors, love your friends, love your things. But growing up, I was never told be kind to yourself. It was again, be kind to everyone else. So yeah, that's a huge thing that I think a lot of people, if you're just doing the other stuff and you're not putting this into your, your well-being routine, it's only going to take you so far. This is 100% an important ingredient into your balance and your well-being. Definitely.
You touched on it slightly earlier in the interview, your negative thoughts. To be able to recognize your negative thoughts, we said petty patty. If you don't recognize them and the negative thoughts kind of just, they come and go as they please. I guess my question is, how detrimental is it not to deal with potential negative thoughts that come and go, as opposed to recognizing them and saying, I see how I feel at the moment. I'm sitting with it and I'm going to let it pass.
Yeah. I mean, it just takes you over. Yeah. It consumes you. It doesn't allow you to rest. It doesn't allow you to, ask for help, right? It's the thing that stops you. And here's another interesting thing is our minds, if left on default, have 80% negative thoughts. This is a 80%. If left on default, our thoughts are 80% negative. Not just you, not just Raya and Kai, but in general, the human brain, again, because our amygdala is going off, looking for danger, trying to keep us safe all the time, working. So if we just let ourselves be on default, it's going to be negative.
So you have to actively push them out.
You have to.
Or recognize them and then
you have to. Yeah. You have to create the awareness by naming her or it. And then you practice the mindfulness of when it comes up, not letting it consume you, but like engaging. One of the first things I always say is when it comes up, for a few weeks, just write down everything it says. Just write it all down. And when I did this exercise, is writing everything down the Punisher was saying. And when I looked back at it, I was like, oh my gosh, none of these words are actually mine. They're my dad's. Oh, wow. My dad used to say these things, not because he was a bad father, but because he grew up with this kind of like, you always got to do better. Yeah. I played competitive sports. He played competitive sports. He wanted me to be a collegiate athlete. I was. And so
probably a way to potentially motivate.
Exactly. So, and that's how he was raised too. So I don't think of him as a bad father at all, but that made me realize, wow, these thoughts aren't even mine. And so that was a huge like wake up call, like, what thoughts are mine? And now I have more control of what goes in my head. Well, because I'm more mindful, because I have the awareness of writing them down. So I would say naming that, writing them down, recognizing where you come. It might be your dad. It might be your mom. It might be society. It might be this Instagram. And then you're like, I don't want it.
And it's actually quite nice. I think journaling is a huge part. Yes. I find in maintaining sort of comfort and well-being, but it's also I think we're all quite factual people. So once you write it down and it's in front of you and you're reading it, you write it, you put it away, you go back to read it and you think, hold on a second. Like you said, sort of realizations come through when it's on paper, which can be a little bit confronting.
It is very confronting. And I always say our mind is an evidence building machine. So if you give it evidence, it will believe that. So if you put down, and so that was my evidence that those thoughts are not mine because I had it in front of me. But the other thing about our mind is it doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's not real. So you could just be telling yourself a bunch of stuff like, I'm the most beautiful girl in the world. And like after time, it enters your subconscious and then you literally believe that, whether it's externally true, but our subconscious controls 90% of what we do. And we're only conscious of 10% of ourselves.
That's a little scary.
It is.
That's a little bit scary.
It is. But we can reprogram our subconscious through habits. So by doing something over a daily basis for a long period of time, we then reprogram our subconscious either through removing the negative or starting to tell yourself like these kind of like self-affirming thoughts, that kind of thing.
Thoughts.
Yeah.
Because if you've got all of these statistics, you've got 80% negative thoughts.
Yes.
And then what was that just now? 10%.
And then we have our subconscious and our conscious. Yeah. Our conscious is what we're aware of. Our subconscious is what we're not aware of. But 90% of what we do is subconscious. 10% of what we do is actually in our consciousness.
So if you really think about it, you've got the majority of your life, you're quite negative, and subconsciously that's taken over. And you've got 10% to focus on something that you can potentially turn around.
So yeah, in the way that I see is like, oh my gosh, I'm doing all these things at only 10% of my potential. If I start tapping into the subconscious, which sometimes people call it shadow work, I have all this untapped power that I can now access, which is very exciting and that's how I feel now is like, I'm not fully, but like I get to tap into my subconscious and all this 90% of untapped power and
I feel
potential.
Like we need to do another one on
I would love to.
How would you even go about tapping into yourself, your subconscious? Is it just being aware?
It is still even today, I have a coach, right? Because it's your subconscious. I'm not like I really don't know. I don't even So, but once you bring the subconscious into your consciousness, that's when you as a person can take that thought and change it into something else. So for example, even me speaking right now is a huge subconscious flip. I was the person in school, even to university. If I had to speak, I would be absent on that day because I was so terrified to speak in front of people.
It sounds like a complete natural. You're a motivational speaker.
Exactly. But that is not because I was raised in a way to say like, share your voice. You're so confident. Yeah. I was the completely opposite. Like if you ask my parents, I was shy. I never raised my hand in class. So that is a subconscious flip. That is one example that I always share of like, yeah, you think I'm like super chatty, but I wasn't like this at all till like 5 years ago. Not even 5 years ago. I'd say like 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. Up until then, like back of the room person.
It's fascinating.
Yeah. Yes.
That's truly fascinating.
It is.
I feel like every single human being needs to have a quick course on that, because subconsciously you might be doing a lot of harm to others around you, where you can potentially change that.
Yeah.
To yourself and others around you. Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many things that I thought were in my personality that aren't. I was like the worrier. I was the overthinker.
Oh, that's me.
Oh. But now I'm like, I still care. It's not that I don't care.
You don't care, but you want to not worry or, not to overthink every aspect of life.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when you leave some space, the universe surprises you with something better that you can like,
yes, like today.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah. So yeah, again, huge subconscious flip. Like this is not the person I was 3 years ago or 4 years ago. Like these things. Yeah. I feel like I see little light bulbs going off in your head. I'm loving this.
Moment, it's like this is physical enlightenment.
Yes, I love this. Everyone needs to know this. That's why I'm so glad we're on a podcast.
No, really, because it's so, the thing is, you go through, and there's, again, you hear of these crazy statistics of people who have depression, postnatal depression, whether it's depression in life. Now, apparently there was like an insane statistics I read that, men under the age of like 30 or something in the UK, the level or the incidences of suicide has like massively gone up because of potential self-limiting thought.
Same in the US. Yeah.
Next podcast has to be all about, and it's just the ability to come out of that.
Yeah.
And bring in your self-conscious.
Bring it from your subconscious into your consciousness. Forward. Yeah. And then take it forward and change it through your daily habits. As opposed to
prescribing them all sorts of, antidepressants and things like that. Oh, this needs to happen. It needs to be a prerequisite. Do you do this with children or no adults?
No, adults, because they're subconscious forms when you're a child. So, So then also some of the work that I do is like the inner child healing and just this stuff. I've been reprogramming these stories that, we picked up when we were a kid. Cause like I was saying earlier.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Okay. That's all of those stories I had were from a kid. And again, it wasn't even my parents telling me, oh, you can't speak. It was again, seeing, my mom was an immigrant from the Philippines to the US. So she never was very vocal. She always kind of kept her mouth shut.
Yeah.
And I even remember like, again, it was never told to me directly, but I always felt this message of like, you cannot speak, make yourself small. You meant to be seen, not heard. And that was my idea of how I was meant to live my life until 4 years ago or 5 years ago. Yeah.
I need to make a booking with you.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Honestly, this is brilliant. Honestly, I never really thought, number one, I never really thought these, the amount as to which our subconscious takes over and how much actual conscious mind we have.
Yeah.
And the fact that all our thoughts are negative potentially.
Yeah. 80% on the norm. Yeah, it's nothing. And when I found this out, I gave myself a huge break because I was so hard on myself. I was like, why are you so negative? You didn't have anything bad happen to you. You should be more grateful and positive.
Be more grateful. And touch wood, it's all good.
Yeah.
But
But I still couldn't deny my feelings. And I still felt anxious and worried and stressed all the time. But again, it was because I wasn't checking Petty Patty and the Punisher. I was like letting them run free. Like
the Punisher and Petty Patty.
I know. It's so funny.
They are amazing.
They are.
Like, guys, we're going to have to use them. I'm going to now name mine. Exactly those.
Please do it. Go for it.
Again, I feel like I could talk to you for another 2 hours about this, but time constraint.
No worries.
What would be like your biggest take home to anyone who's listening, whether it's again, having that level of emotional intelligence and how that impacts your stress and mental well-being?
Yeah. So I want to take it to the beginning of the podcast when I shared a bit about my story and how I was having all these different issues. And I was like looking for the medicine, looking for the cure. And through all of these different things that I've learned, I realized like you are the medicine. Like I am the medicine. You are the medicine. Your nervous system can heal your the stress, your mindset work, your subconscious and your consciousness can rewire your brain to be a more positive thing. So again, I always want to tell people you are the medicine, meaning you want the answers. They're here. So if that could be it, that's it. That's what I want people to remember or to know.
That's amazing. It's fascinating. Kai, thank you.
You're welcome.
I always end the podcast with a quote. I usually have a quote dedicated to a podcast depending on the theme. So my quote for today was, true strength is not in controlling emotions, but navigating them with compassion.
Yeah.
What would yours be?
So mine is, I say this all the time, your soul knows the answers your mind is seeking.
It's perfectly fitting.
Again, your soul, for me, it's not a religious, spiritual, it's that inner connection. It's your heart.
Yeah.
So anything you're looking for, your soul knows the answers.
Oh, brilliant. I'm telling you, I feel like I don't want this to end and I'm going to probably keep you back after we
That's
switch off
fine.
this camera.
I'd love to be back.
This was so amazing and so insightful on every aspect. I'm so grateful for your time and for you being here. Thank you. I'm sure everyone, I'm going to link all of your details.
Yes.
What is the best way for people to reach out to you? That's
anything. Instagram, LinkedIn.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll link it all in the show notes.
Perfect.
All over the, social media, YouTube, everything. I'll also be hitting you up probably.
Yes. I love it. I'd love to speak more.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. It was so fun being here. I loved it.
Me too. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to They Say It Takes a Village. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I look forward to bringing you another one next week. Don't forget, please subscribe, rate, and review so I can reach and help even more parents. And if you've got a topic that you'd like me to cover, please head over to my Instagram page, ittakesavillage.me, and drop me a line.